particular reason? Are you ashamed to be involved?
Well, no, but I'm kind of eating right now, so I don't think I should eat in front of you.
Hey, we would love it, you know.
I got my coffee, so
Have you
Well,
not,
I don't mind. I don't mind taking a drink of something in front of you, but I don't want to be chewing and talking at the same time.
well, thank you for not chewing and talking at the same time. So, Perry, are you going to record that? If you
Yes.
don't want to, it's fine.
No, it's recording. It's recording.
Got it. If you went to the Facebook page, you saw that I had forgotten to call George. I understood that George had some experience in the online evangelism as opposed to street evangelism, pros and cons. He had brought it up, and so I just assigned that to him, but I forgot to call him. Then I just found out today that he doesn't have any expertise in it. I don't know that I have any. I don't have any expertise in anything, quite frankly.
Causing trouble.
I've been known to do that. I said in the Facebook post, I ought to have a master's degree in venue evangelism, but they don't give college hours for those kind of hours, long though they may be. That was kind of tongue in cheek, but anyway. Although, let me just mention one thing while we're getting this thing started. I am so glad Dana Whistler is not with us, because I would have to really clean up on him. He fantastic birthday cake with more ice cream than I've seen, and I don't know when. And we were just packing it in, and that's the last thing somebody who's labored as hard as I have to lose 60 pounds needs, is the ice cream from Dana's birthday party. But that's what I was dreaming at 5 o'clock this morning when my clock went off. So anyway, let's talk about this thing that Perry's been doing. Wish Perry had some pictures, but as he said, he forgot to take pictures. And let me tell you, I understand that perfectly. Been there, done that. And that's why I usually designate my wife to take the pictures. And which incidentally is a really good blessing to have as a wife who's a coworker in evangelism and can be with us and take the pictures and things like that. So, and I don't know that that's not true with Perry's wife, but anyway, I know she really gives it to him sometimes on Facebook. So,
No, she's good at being involved in the evangelism, but she wasn't there last week, and she won't be able to be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
But she does plan on being there in the future.
Share with us what you did, what the venue was, what you did. Even though we don't have any pictures to show for it, if you got somebody's going to be taking some pictures tomorrow.
Unless I forget, yeah.
You need to get somebody else to do it, brother. I get busy doing it and I forget to do it.
We'll see, unless I forget to ask somebody to take pictures. There's also that.
That's why I'm training Rebecca Caldera to run this drone. She's kind of interested in the drone. And so I'm training her to do it. She said, well, thank you. My son will be very glad that I know how to fly a drone, since he's always wanted one.
Oh.
And now if I'm learning to fly the drone, then I'll go buy him a drone. So we'll have some fun with that. So talk to us a little bit about what you're doing, and I'll pick up with county fairs, farmers markets, art fairs, etc. Next week.
Okay.
And we'll talk a little more at length. So talk to us, brother.
I started off my sermon last Sunday, which was a review of what we did with, I'm going to say about the scariest thing that any preacher can say. I'm going to preach you 3 different sermons in one setting.
I can empty out the auditorium in about 30 seconds if I did that.
What I did was get your Bibles and turn to Acts chapter 17. And we're going to see in verses starting in 17 and 18 the reasoning for my 3 different sermons. And so he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews.
Correct.
That's one type of sermon.
Right.
And with those who worship God, so that those that were with the Jews, God fears. And in the marketplace every day, it's a second type of sermon. And I pointed out to a couple people, I said, being at the flea market, that is being at a marketplace. And
Right.
the looks on their faces were very similar. They went, wow, I hadn't thought about that. And so being at the flea market is very much what Paul was doing. He was at the marketplace. And then also some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers argued with him, saying, what is this pseudo-intellectual, and so on and so forth. And that leads him to the Areopagus, which is his 3rd type of sermon. So you've got a sermon with those that are religious. You've got a sermon out in a marketplace. And you've got a sermon with those that are not familiar with the scriptures, but are philosophers. And the points that I made to the congregation, because I said the sermon was to teach us how to do personal evangelism. And I said, here are 3 points that you need to remember that you will see in these 3 different sermons. For the sermon on the synagogue, I just went back and I read and commented Paul's sermon in Acts chapter 13. Right. And then we read the sermon on Mars Hill. And here are the 3 things that they have in common. 1, go with what they know. Paul went with the scriptures in Acts chapter 13, but he went with pagan poets in Acts chapter 17. Go with what you know. And the 3rd one, let's see, what was it? Use what God knows. Okay. And so that, of course, would be, scriptures, or it would be, nature and things like that. So go with what you know, go with what they know, and go with what God has shown us. And
go with what is known of God.
Yeah, go with what is known of God, which fits very well in Acts chapter 17. And the point was,
even their poets know.
Yeah, the point was that you have to use different approaches to different audiences. But also, after I tell stories of what happened, I told the congregation, I said, you might be thinking, Perry, I couldn't do any of that. And the point is, well, you might not be able to, but I can't do what you can do. So one of the ways to encourage people to do personal evangelism, and whoever's been wanting ways to encourage people to do that is not here with us this morning. And I don't, is don't try to make disciples or clones of yourself. Rather teach people to use who they are, who God made them to be in doing personal evangelism. Now, what happened at our booth? We did the Bible Jeopardy. I'll show. I can't show it because it's disabled, but you saw that last week. We had a small TV screen, probably like a 18 or 20-inch screen. It worked fine. We are going to try a 42-inch screen this time, which should be very vibrant and colorful, drawing people in. And we did what Roy suggested, and that is the TV or the table was set inside the room. They gave us an incredibly great location, and it was already formed out. It's probably like a 10 by 10 spot.
Yeah.
And I was shocked that we got as good a place as we did. And it was already decorated from the previous vendor. The one next to it looked like a garage, but this one looked like a bedroom almost. So I feel God blessed us in that. So we had the table in a few feet, so everybody had to come in. And we had some really interesting.
That's what I want them to do.
Well,
You
now-
want them in your territory if possible.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
And so here's some of the things that happened. We had a visitor Wednesday night on our Zoom from that particular Saturday adventure. So it's already starting to bear fruit that way.
You've already had a raging success if you got one person.
Yeah. Two,
Yeah.
we had somebody, and I don't know if it's the same lady or not, who threw down $20 onto the table. And I said, no, we're not taking money. She said, this is just the beginning. I want to start making donations at your church. So she's leaning towards becoming part of us, even though she might not even all understand what that all means. But she was that much affected by.
Can I make an observation? Can
Yeah.
I make an observation on that?
Go ahead.
One thing I've noticed is especially in door knocking, is people really appreciate that you're doing something in their communities, especially when you're coming to them in a different way than Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses do. They appreciate it.
Yeah.
We had that lady wrote us a card and included a $20 check, and then called the church's number and left a message saying, I wanted you to know how much I appreciated you guys coming by. And it was totally different than most encounters that we have with religious people at the door. They said it just happened to be that I had talked to them and said, especially please tell Royce. Actually, I think she said Roy, but I was the only one that had that name or close to it. Please tell Roy I appreciated his being there. So it's the same response, very similar response.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
We had some people who did pretty poorly on the Jeopardy, but I've come up with a phrase that kind of makes them comfortable. And one of the workers that we had from the church that joined us, we had 5 people join us Saturday, which not the most we've ever had, but it's better than none. We had 5 different people.
The other churches?
What now?
That was from one of the other churches.
No, we had 5 people from our own church.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Join us. And there's a preacher from another church down the road that is going to visit us sometime. But I came up with a phrase that's made people more comfortable. And one of the volunteers says she really liked that phrase. And it's this. So if you do the Bible Jeopardy, when people say, I don't know that much about the Bible, this is what I say to them. There's no losing, there's only learning.
Right.
And that's a phrase I say over and over and over again. There's no losing, there's only learning. And it makes people comfortable. And I tell them, we'll even give you hints. And I come up with silly hints. The kids usually love the hints. But that again makes a connection because we got parents and children there together. For example, here's a silly one that I gave. A mother and her son were there, and the question was miracles of Jesus. And the question was, what happened at a wedding? And she knew the answer, but her son didn't. And I gave this hint. I told him, I said, look, if you get the answer wrong, I do not want to hear you whine. And he said, well, I don't know. I said, just listen closely to the hint again. If you get the wrong answer, I don't want to hear you whine And he goes, oh, wine, water turned to wine. I said, that's it. So the kids are having fun. I love having that kind of experience with them. But we've even had people ace the board. And as I said last week, we always have an entire category on baptism. And a husband and wife who aced the board, when we went through the ones about baptism, and one of the questions was, how many were baptized on the day of Pentecost? They said 3,000. I said, yeah, doesn't that show you how important baptism is? And they immediately said, yes, it is. Well, if I can get more studies with them, I've already made an in with them with that question because they already believe baptism is important.
Right.
But I went over the board, how to use Bible Jeopardy with you guys last week. So before I go away from that, do y'all have any questions on the board, how to use Bible Jeopardy?
I would love to see how it is implemented with the larger screen. I think that smaller screen, I think that would be a distinct impediment in a semi-public environment. I think that 42-inch screen is going to be, I think you're going to find it proving to be really good. I would love to see you do a video of that, maybe 10 minutes or so of activity in and around your booth when that's being done. I would love to see that and to post that on even do a Zoom broadcast and record it that way, and then post it from that on the challenges site.
I'll try to do that. So we've had, I'd have to get their permission too to film it, but I don't think that would be a problem. So we've already had a visitor Wednesday night from what we did last Saturday. Yes, George?
Perry, one other question. You mentioned, I think last week, where you went to get this PowerPoint for Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Can you either text that to me? You may have already done it. If I did, I forgot. But just where you go to find that.
Just Google Jeopardy template, and you'll have hundreds of choices.
Okay. That's gonna be wonderful. Hundreds of choices.
Yeah, you will. You'll have hundreds of choices. What I've got to do is I've got to find
that ain't no big deal, George. You're an Aggie, don't you know?
Yeah, that's a good way to confuse an Aggie right there. Give me 100 choices.
Now, what was also really exciting was all of the happenings at the booth that had nothing to do with our Bible Jeopardy. For example, they gave us a great location, but the location was right across the aisle from a marijuana dispensary. Now, everything was legal. They weren't selling, marijuana that gets you high. They were selling like CBD oil. They were selling bongs, and I think the guy was a little surprised. I knew what a bong was, and he said, "Yeah, we sell some of these." I said, "Oh, that's a bong." And he, "Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is."
Boy, if you only knew my past.
And so, but this is what happened. Okay, remember, we're a church booth, Bible Jeopardy. They're selling marijuana products right across the aisle. He does this to me. Come here. I walk over there.
Were you ready?
And I think that he was trying to figure out what kind of preacher or person I was. And so his first question, and this was the fun part for me. He said, if Joseph and Mary were married and she got pregnant by somebody other than Joseph, Isn't that infidelity? So that was my introduction to him. And I'm standing in front of this marijuana dispensary because he called me over to him. He didn't come to see me. It's like, you come to my territory. And so I answered him like this. I said, well, the fact that a miracle was involved kind of puts that in a different category, don't you think? And I said, and besides that, you know, technically, Joseph and Mary were not married yet. So he goes to his next question. Well, if Jesus was born and Mary and Joseph weren't even technically married, doesn't that make him a bastard child? And that was his language. Again, I'm getting the feeling he's trying to feel me out.
You think?
How I'm going to react. And I said, you know what? In a way, you're right, which probably shocked him. I said, do you want to hear why I think God had Jesus born in such an unusual circumstance? Okay, yeah, why? I said, he begins by being born in this way that will automatically put him into the marginalized of society. He's born in a stable, put in a manger. I mean, none of this is like what you would expect from the king, but he's with the poorest of the poor. He is with those that are socially outcast. That's how Jesus began his life on this earth. And he ended his life on this earth being crucified between two thieves, being condemned for something that he was not guilty of. So he begins with the marginalized and he ends with the marginalized, and all through his ministry, he is reaching out to those that the religious people of his time rejected, the marginalized.
Yeah, I've used that. I've used that illustration in several sermons.
Yeah.
I've used that in evangelism too. And one of the things I made had a pretty skeptical individual, probably very similar to this guy you're dealing with, who was he was still kind of poo-pooing the idea of Jesus. And when I used the thieves, and I said something to the effect of, all we need nowadays are the innocent projects to prove that there are innocent people who are in prison.
Uh-huh.
And that instantly changed his approach.
Yeah.
I think he was going to be setting me up on this as this great supporter of law enforcement, of law and order. And that effectively spun. Anyway, I think I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, that's a good way to take it.
Yeah.
Then after that, he said, you know what, if you have 10 people sit in a row, and you know the old game, the telephone game, where the first person whispers something to the second person, and then the third person, by the time it gets to the end, it is nothing like what originally started. So how do you explain the Bible being basically people telling tales? So that's nothing like in the end what it was in the beginning.
Yeah, I've heard that objection's been brought up, and I'll take it. I'll pick up as though they already know this. I'll say, it's really interesting that you brought up that there are over 40 people who participated in writing the Bible over a period of about 1,500, 1,600 years. That's really interesting that you picked up on that. It's kind of a shocker because they don't even realize it's that many.
Right. No, that's a good thing to do. Yes, George.
Yeah, they use the same logic with regard to the manuscript evidence. They say, well, how do we know we have the original? Because after all, we have a copy of a copy of a copy. And, over time, then it's become corrupted. And what they don't realize is that this second copy or third copy could have been a copy of the first one, but they use that same logic with regard to manuscript evidence. Anyway, very good. Go ahead.
Well, the way that I handled it with this gentleman was I said, well, that's where the concept of inspiration comes in. I said, now let's take this telephone game. Instead of, the first person whispering to the second person, whispering to the third person, all the way to the end, let's take the first person who whispered to, like the teacher, whoever it is, because that's the way it usually goes. The first person who whispered it to the first person, then whispers it the first person to the second person, the first person to the third person whispering, the first person to the fourth person whispering. Can you see how the story is not going to be changed? Because you don't have just a bunch of people telling the same tale that might be changed through forgetting or whatever. But inspiration is like the original person whispering to each one. And it's like, okay. And said that's how inspiration helps. And by the end of those 3 grilling questions, we had a good conversation.
Yeah. That's good. Did you notice that anybody else was listening to the conversation? Did it bring anybody else into the conversation?
Not at that time.
Okay.
And that wasn't the only one that we had. Somebody else came in, saw the game, didn't want to play it, but he said, I do have a question for you. And see, the wonderful thing about this Bible Jeopardy is it works. Whether you get people to do the game or people just want to ask you questions.
Right.
And he said something to the effect, somebody was telling me that they believe in reincarnation. Does the Bible say anything about that? And I said, yeah. So we read Hebrews chapter 9, verse 27. And then I asked him, I said, do you want to know why it's appointed to men once to die? He said, why? I said, because Jesus died once. I said, they're connected. And then one of the people that was working with me read the next verse. And I said, and do you want to know why it was so important for Jesus to die and be resurrected? And he said, well, why? I said, most people look at the gospel as saving us from our sins, but it also saves us from death in the resurrection. I said, you go back to Genesis, you have Satan tempting Eve, and we have where Adam and Eve, they die spiritually when they sin, but they also start to die physically because the tree of life is taken away. What Jesus does is he gives us life spiritually and he gives us life physically in the resurrection, because death is actually called the last enemy. So the gospel, and so here I'm preaching to him about Jesus and the resurrection that started with the question about reincarnation and how the flaw in reincarnation is it is contrary to what the gospel is. The gospel involves not just salvation from spiritual death, but salvation from physical death. And I was like, when you put it all together, how cool is that? And he said, so we're going to be physically raised from the dead. And I said, yes. And then our bodies are going to be changed. But that is necessary for Jesus to conquer Satan, both spiritually and physically. Because if there is no resurrection and there's only forgiveness of sins, then Satan wins at least one battle.
Right.
And so he kind of shook his head. It made sense to him. So we took that question and we used that to preach to him the gospel, connecting the whole story together. And he listened. And then he had another question. He said, well, what about all these translations?
I always keep a spare here.
Yeah, don't they all tell different stories? So I asked him, I said,
Hello.
if I were to tell you to, go tell, and I don't remember the exact illustration, so I'll just use another one. If I were to tell you, here's $5, go get me 2 tacos from the taqueria outside. And then you go up to the lady and say, how many I want as many tacos as I can get for $5. And she gives you 2 tacos because they're $2 each. I said, did you say anything different than what I said? He said, no, because you still got 2 tacos. I said, that's the point. So manuscripts might differ in some of the words that are used, but that doesn't mean that they're telling a different story.
Exactly.
Just like you would say something, and then when you go repeat it to somebody else, you might not get it word for word, but you are conveying what the point was. And he said, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when we do these booths, not only do we get people in doing the Bible Jeopardy, parents doing them together,
Right.
but we also get a lot of discussions going on outside. People are just curious. And sometimes they're curious, how are we going to react to their questions?
Right.
Right.
I think that's a great idea. What exactly was the venue you were at? Those that are here, I know Carl Flea is with us. He's from Hillsboro, Hillsboro, Ohio. And I'm supposed to be up there in June and September, either one or both. And I want him to hear different venues. Now, the one that I had scheduled for this, I was going to deal with county fairs, farmers market, and art fairs, which is something similar to what he's dealing with, although he's got a slightly different one. He may want to share what one of those is and see if you guys have any specific advice on that. But what was the venue that you were at? What was it actually?
It is a permanent flea market, and it's indoors. And it's only open on Saturday and Sundays. We're swamped on Sundays, so we can't man the booth. But what I did was I left all the free Bibles with our insert
Right
on the table. We didn't really give away many Bibles, and that might be because so many people have Bibles on their phones already. They don't need them. So we're going to make a little flyer to give, that one that I showed y'all last week. You know, what does God say to do to be saved? And that is hear, think, feel, do, receive, based on the sermon in Acts chapter 2. We're probably going to put that on the table, and people can take that instead of free Bibles.
I'm going to add that to that list. What did you do, if anything, that is consistent with the concept of a flea market, or did you just move entirely within the realm of teaching, which is what I would expect to do?
Yeah.
But did you do anything that that would be characteristic of a normal flea market? Of course, I suppose giving out free Bibles could be considered that.
When I went and asked if we could do this, they asked what we're going to be selling. I said, nothing. We're just going to be teaching the Bible using Bible Jeopardy and giving away free Bibles. They said, okay. And they let us have a spot. A pastor from another church came by and asked us how we were able to do this. And he said he tried to get a booth just to set up for prayers and was turned down. I said, well, I guess maybe it's just, who you ask, because I had no trouble whatsoever. Maybe it was because we were, offering a service of a game, or maybe we were giving away something. I don't know, but we had no trouble whatsoever getting in. And
you brought shame and disgrace upon the reputation of the churches of Christ by not saying Ha, go do your own homework. Nah, 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 nah. That was Kang.
Oh, sorry to disappoint you once again, Royce.
Always count upon Royce as being the adult in the room.
Well,
Yeah.
but you know what? Isn't that kind of the way we usually handle things? You know, we raised some eyebrows, you know, when Ross was here, and we dealt with the problem at the Hall of Records. And Ethan Longhenry, we had dispatched Ethan Longhenry and Raja Sand. I think, well, Raja may not have been there, but Ethan Longhenry was with somebody else when we sent him down to the Hall of Records. And immediately one of the office holders going to work said, "You can't be here. This is private property."
Huh? Oh.
And scared him to death. So we're going to call the sheriff on you. Because it's the county Hall of Records. And a security guard, not a sheriff's deputy, but a security guard who's actually affiliated with the county, came out and tried to run him off, scared Ethan within an inch of his life. "You're going to be thrown in jail." And he's thinking, "Oh no, I've got a new baby. How am I going to deal with this?" And Ross said, "Ain't no big deal. I'll go down there." And Ross just bowed his neck, man. He just said, "You can't throw me out." "Well, you know, this is private property." He said, "There's no such thing." He said, "This is public property. This is bought and paid for with public taxes. Haven't you ever read the First Amendment?" "Well, this is California. It has nothing to do with the federal government." And Ross answered, he said, "You know, the federal government trumps state law, county law, and city law." And he stood his ground. I made a telephone call to one of the county supervisors that I knew, Josie Gonzalez. I'd had breakfast and coffee with her a few times. I called her office. She wasn't there, but her secretary said, "Oh, so you have every right to be there." She said, I'll tell Supervisor Gonzalez that you called." Well, she called me back in about 20, 30 minutes. She said, "I've already informed the sheriff's office that they are to go down there and inform the Hall of Records, all of the office people there, that you have a right to be there." One of the office holders said, "Well, if we let you be out here, we have to let the Muslims be here." And Ross's response was, "Hey, let them be here," which totally took the lady aback. But he's right about that. And he handled it like a true pro should do. You really have to learn what your rights are. A flea market is a slightly different situation because that's a private venue. And you would have to have specific permission to do that, and in some sense actually be invited. But when you're dealing with a public venue, that's a totally different issue. That's a First Amendment right. A private venue doesn't have to give you that right. The First Amendment applies only to the government, which is something other people don't understand.
I get the feeling that there are a lot of repeat customers at this flea market. And so what I told the church was, I plan on visiting the vendors and purchasing from them. That way they'll start to see me as a regular there.
Yeah.
The lady that visited us at our church services on Wednesday night, she said, "Well, I plan on being back at the booth on Saturday, so I'll see you," which means I've got to, use a different game for, a different set of questions. So that's going to, keep me busy if I have to do a new one every single week. But if any of you, if y'all want, help with this, whether you're doing it at a flea market or if you're doing it at a festival, because we do the same thing at festivals. This is our main method.
Yeah. I love what you're doing. I love the idea of a flea market. I don't know that I've ever even thought of a flea market. There are flea markets all around us, of course, but I never really thought about going there. And I'm a little bit surprised because I'm always looking for a place where people are gathered. So I think it's a stroke of genius myself. I'm proud of you.
Well, I've learned from a good teacher.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I'd love to see some pictures from your effort tomorrow to
Yeah.
see how it comes out, how it what the eye appeal of it is. Are you going to be in the same booth? Are you?
Yep.
Gonna,
Yep, we've already reserved it.
Wow.
We had one of our volunteers went to go clean up Sunday for me, and he said, "You want to do it next Saturday?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'll go reserve the same booth." So if we can get the same booth every single week, and it's one that's already framed out, it looks nice, then that's going to be another advantage.
Boy, that's a great idea.
This is our third type of evangelism that we're doing every single week now, and we're seeing contacts from all three of them.
I think that's wonderful. That raises the bar for all of us, including me. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate the quickening influence on me and on my mind to work through some of this. I love the idea that it's a venue. I don't ever remember thinking that we needed to go to a flea market. No, mainly because I don't particularly like flea markets. So
Well, I figure
flea
the
markets
prices are cheaper.
I don't need. So now a ham fest, that's different. Yeah, a ham fest, that's totally different, you know.
That's a ham radio operator's flea market, Joyce.
Yeah.
That's what
Boy,
that is.
I got myself in trouble on that. See, I
You
couldn't
did.
do it.
I know.
I couldn't do it at a ham fest because I'd be too busy buying cheap junk.
So Perry, your three outlets are the flea market, the Zoom meetup, and what else?
The mail out cards,
Oh yeah, the mail
the
out.
new move in people. This last Sunday, we had a visitor who showed up on site, that is at the church building, and joined us. And she came because of a card that she received. And I received a call. This is important. I have all the people that mail out cards. I don't do that. One, I'm horrible at mailing things out. But two, I don't need to be doing everything.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I made sure that all the people know, make sure you put the phone number of the church on every card, because every time somebody calls the church building, it automatically gets forwarded to my cell phone.
Right.
And so I've gotten calls from people saying, I just wanted to thank you for sending me a card. And I do plan on visiting you sometime.
Yeah.
So those are the three things that we've got going on right now concurrently, which to me, I'm very excited about, that we're doing three different things every single week now.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're probably going to find is the same thing that we found, that we end up doing things that no other churches in town are doing. And because we're doing it, now they're doing what we're doing. On your, you're talking about the Zoom meetup. Are you talking about like on the Lord's Day, or are you doing a separate meeting?
A separate meeting.
Okay. When are you doing it?
Thursday night at 6 o'clock. But we have done it on, Tuesday night. I think we've done it on Monday night. Basically, every once in a while, we will poll the people that are coming and say, what night is good for you. And we're thinking.
Are you doing it for 1 hour, 6 to 7?
Yep.
All right.
And we're thinking about adding a second meetup Zoom class every week. So we might be doing 2 of these every week.
Okay. What are you doing for material? Are you taking questions or are you using a curriculum?
We often poll the people that are visiting. What are you interested in studying? And then sometimes we will just take a book in the Bible, like we just finished John.
Right.
And, people show up, and so they learn that way. We're going to do the topic grace starting, I think, next week or two, because that was one of the topics that was
You
requested.
get 20 people coming, you'll be able to sell 20 copies of your book.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, hey, that's what Oral Roberts does.
So Perry, on your mail out, I know that Tom Montgomery recommended sending it, I think, the same person 6 different times, six weeks in a row. Do y'all do that?
No,
Absolutely.
we don't.
You know,
Yes, we follow up 3 times, but I don't think 3 times is adequate. I don't think 3 times is adequate. I'm glad to hear that as an example.
so you don't follow up, or they just receive it once.
They receive it once, and that's because we're getting. Let me check. How many? Okay, our last receipt from him, we had. Just a second. We had 229 addresses.
Wow.
Yeah, he gave me, he did one for me where just people that study the Bible in your
Yep.
area. There were
We-
700 contacts.
He asked
Yeah,
us if we wanted that too, but we're just going
Yeah.
to stick with the people that are moving in because I don't want to overwhelm our volunteers who are sending out these cards. I mean, it might be 51 week, that time it's 200, but let's say that you send it out 6 times. Well, what's 6 times 100? That's 600 a week.
Right.
A lot.
And we've got 6 or 7 volunteers.
Yeah. The only way you could make that financially feasible would be through some sort of mass mailing,
We're checking
with-
into that. Yeah, we're checking into that.
something like that. Maybe I'm not a big fan of these flyers. You get like every Thursday, we get a mailbox full of flyers. They're all folded together into one mailing. But most people, we actually considered that at one time, but virtually everybody we talked to, including people that we ran into on the street, said, no, they just throw them away. So we opted to not do that. What marketing tactics are you using? Like, for instance, your Zoom meeting on Thursday nights. What are you using to market that? Are you advertising through Facebook or what?
Right now, we're only doing it on meetup.com. And we get plenty of traffic that way. We've all offered it sometimes on Facebook, and I probably should start doing that again.
All right.
So that's the only marketing for our Coffee House Evangelism Bible studies. What we're doing for our mail outs is I'm letting the volunteers choose how they want to do this. We have one person that puts all the names in an Excel file, and then they divide the names up among the 7 volunteers. One lady has ordered cards that have all the information, so she can just send that out and maybe put a short little note on or sign it or something like that.
Right.
We have another lady that handwrites cards.
Right. Who
And so-
buys the stamps?
Right now, they are, but we're checking into
Wow.
a bulk mailing permit.
Right. That actually can be a significant expense to people. If you
Yeah.
get people doing, say, well, even 10 a week. You're talking about $5 extra right there. Just and that definitely assists the contribution, because that's not coming out. If you have 5 or 6 people doing 10 a week, that's $25, $35 out of the collection plan.
Yeah, if these people didn't want to, if they said, can I take the money I'm contributing on Sunday and use it to buy stamps? I say, amen, go for it. You're still doing the Lord's work there.
One thing we told, we have 3 people that do something like that. We do mail outs. We do mail outs of cards to members of the church. We have another person who does mail outs to visitors, guests, and we have another person who does mail out of the bulletin. So we mail the bulletin to everybody who is not present. That way, all of the 63 members get the bulletin every single week, regardless of whether they show up for the Zoom sessions.
Right.
Because we have some elderly people that wouldn't know a Zoom from a zebra, and nor are they interested in finding out the difference. So
one of the benefits of doing these 3 different outreaches is we have different people involved in, 1 or 2 of them that are not necessarily involved in all of them. So right now, for example, we've got a mother and daughter who's going to join me for the flea market booth. They haven't joined us at the Zoom coffee house, and they haven't joined us in writing, but they're doing this. So this allows you to tap into the different gifts that different people have.
right.
I mean, I am thrilled that we're getting volunteers.
Right. Yeah.
One of my favorite passages is dealing with this. It's in Judges, where Deborah sings.
Right.
It talks about when the leaders lead and the people volunteer.
Right.
So when you got God, and then you got leaders, and you've got volunteers, then you have success.
Right.
Forget where that is in Judges, like Judges 5 or 6 or something like that.
That's Deborah's song. Yeah.
Yep, Deborah's song. When the leaders lead and the people volunteer.
Right. And God's the source for it all. I've used that in sermons before. I like the way you've applied it. And incidentally, Carl, because I know Carl is really working on this there at Hillsborough. And actually, he's been working on this evangelism thing at Hillsborough for years. I found their ad in which paper was it? What's the name of the paper? Not Christianity Magazine. It was the one that for crying out loud, I just went blank on it. But where they were doing a special series, they had like 5 different brethren coming in doing evangelism. So I know Carl is looking for some ideas in this regard. So Carl, that's a really good way. You might want to use Deborah's song to get members of the church involved in it. I would really be interested in seeing how you take your marketing tactics, how you expand that. We tried Meetup. Actually, we tried Meetup both with Meetup meetings, and then we tried it after the pandemic hit. We tried to set it up through Zoom. I got absolutely 0 response out of it. So I'm absolutely tickled that you're getting a really good response out of Meetup. That's encouraged me. Maybe I gave up too soon. Maybe the pandemic has created a different mindset in that regard. Do you get a feeling for that at all, Perry?
We often had visitors come to the coffee house when we were doing it in person. So we're not necessarily seeing a a increase of people participating. But I guess one advantage is with Meetup, they can, we're giving them the opportunity to continue to do it, even if they are afraid of going out.
Right.
But we probably have like maybe 1 to 2 to 3 visitors a week, and sometimes repeat visitors. And
Right.
we got 1, 2, or 3 of our own members there. It's not overwhelming. Maybe 5 or 6 people all together. So it's a comfortable Bible study where they feel comfortable in contributing because it's small and intimate.
I mentioned that we are sending cards to members of the church. Another person is sending cards to visitors from visitors cards, and then the other mailing is to the bulletin to everybody who's not present. Actually, what she does is she mails out like 45 or so every single week. And we had a question in that regard, and that we ran past Carol Casillas, who's the CPA that got us legal on our 501c3 and things like that. The church had been claiming that status after that had been suspended because they weren't filing the proper forms. Well, Carol got us straightened out on that. And Carol said, as long as Roxanne is presenting the receipts for those stamps, and Carol can then track it through the computer system. She uses the nonprofit version of QuickBooks. As long as she can track it that way, she will provide a tax receipt for Roxanne. Well,
That's
you
a good idea.
multiply 45 times 52 weeks times 45 cents for each one. I think it's 49 now, isn't it? So 50 cents, calculated at 50 cents. Roxanne's making a considerable contribution just in the mailing out. And that's not anywhere near what we're doing. We usually do about 8 to 10 a week. We've got another 5 or 6 guests that we have. Matter of fact, we continue to have guests. It's kind of interesting. We have some members of the church who don't show up, and we have guests that do. Go figure.
Yep.
So, anybody else doing mailings like that you're using to generate opportunities, such as Zoom meetings, whatever? Okay.
We haven't done it in a long time. We did when I first moved here. We need to get back to it. And actually, we found a place that would do that for us. All we had to do is prepare the material, and they did the mail outs for us, which made it really. But I kind of like Perry's idea of getting people involved.
Oh, yeah, I do too. I do too. I think it's fine to use a mailing service if that simplifies it for you and you're having trouble getting the people to do it. But I just think it's better getting members of the church involved. Many members of the church are not involved anyhow. We need to get them involved. But I like that. We're covering 3 of those, as I've already mentioned. Perry's doing essentially the same thing, but rather than 3 different sets of people, he's doing it with 3 different venues. The mail out to new residents. Where are you pulling that information from? Because some people are going to be asking that. In Texas, we got that information when I was at Refugio. Well, I did it in Irving too. We got that through the Chamber of Commerce. Are you getting it through the electric company, the gas company, Chamber of Commerce? Who are you getting that through?
There is
somebody's going to ask that question.
We're getting it from a brother out in Missouri named Tom Montgomery. This is one of his ministries. So we're not having to do any of the collection of data. He does all of that. And how he does it, I don't know, but he sends us every single week a list.
Okay, what does he charge you for them?
0.
No,
Okay, give me his, Tom Montgomery, do you know contact information for him?
Yeah, let me get it for you. His email address is newmovenow@gmail.com. I will
Does he
put
have
it
a
in,
website? You know?
I'll put it in chat.
Good idea. Good idea. And you're recording this, so that'll be there. All right. Got it.
There you go.
You just what? You just request it based upon zip codes?
Yep. However many you want.
Got it.
And the blessing is, and I told him this, he was an answer to a prayer, because I was praying, for new ways to try to make contacts. And then he calls me. We don't even know each other, but he calls me.
We used to get new hookups through the gas company. In Irving, we got it through the gas company. In Refugio, we got it through the Chamber of Commerce.
We used
But
to
the
get it through
gas-
the water company.
Neither the gas company or water department or electric company reveal that information. They will not provide it here, which is shocking. I'd be interested in knowing how Tom gets that information. Although I don't mind using him, I wouldn't even mind paying him for it. But you're not paying for it at all?
Nope.
Wow.
no, this is what he's an older man. He's retired, and this is his work. He wants to do this for people. That's
I
just,
think that's wonderful.
This
Are you?
New Move Now.
You're using him too, George?
he'll tell you a long story about how it all got started if you want to hear it. I mean, it's pretty amazing. But he did this for a living, basically. How he made contacts for when he was being retired. So he's really knows how to kind of somehow hone it in. I don't know his secret, but anyway.
You guys, are any of you using the city directories like we used in the old days? Like when I was in Kermit, Texas, and in Odessa, we used, what's the name of the company? I just went blank on it. The company that does the city directories. Oh, for crying out loud. Was in my brain just a minute ago. It's what happens when you get old and bald, George. Be careful.
I've got to get out of here, but Perry, this new move now at gmail.com, you said he does this for free,
Yes.
and he does this for any city?
Yes.
Okay.
He will ask you this question. Do you have a church kitchen?
Well,
And that's the only thing that he'll ask.
really?
Yep.
Okay.
So he's opposed to that or what?
He's opposed to it.
Right.
So an area to prep communion is not a kitchen though, right?
Nope.
Okay. All right. I'm going to copy that. I've got to get out of here.
Me too.
I'll see you guys next week.
Where would
And-
he draw? Where would he draw? Take care, Brian. Be safe,
Hey,
brother.
Royce,
Yes, sir.
make it mandatory that Carl shows his face next time.
Oh, Carl is so ugly. I don't blame him for not turning his
Well,
mic.
I've had a chat with him here for a little bit, but I haven't seen him in almost 40 years. So
That right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, he looks. I think he looks way better with this closely cropped beard that he's got. And it really looks. But his sister Peggy is way better looking than him anyway. So
okay.
married to Don
See
Alexander.
you guys, Lord willing, I'll see you guys next week.
Take care, brother.
Okay.
All right. How would Tom handle the situation like in Acts 6, where you have the church obligated to care for widows? How would he handle that?
I don't know. I have actually, when I've preached on this topic, and this is where I think, well, since we're off topic, let's go ahead and stop the recording.